So this pencast is on factoring by grouping. Anytime we want to use factoring by grouping, the first thing we need to do is check to see if our polynomial has a greatest common factor. So to do that, we're going to look at all four terms. The first thing that we would do is change our subtraction to addition of the opposite sign. Now I look at the numerical factors, and I've got 4, -8, 28, and -56. And they all have a greatest common factor of 4. And then when I look at the variables, I've got p to the 5th, which means 5 factors of p, p to the 4th, which means 4 factors of p, p to the 3rd, which means 3 factors of p, and then p squared, so 2 factors of p. So if I look at each of these terms, the smallest number of factors of p that I have is the last one, p squared. So that's going to be my greatest variable factor. So my greatest common factor for this polynomial is 4p to the power of 2. So if I'm going to factor that out of the entire polynomial, I need to use a bracket, because eventually in this problem I'm going to have to introduce parentheses as well. So now I look at it and I say, well, 4 times 1 is 4, so I don't need to have a coefficient, but I have p squared and I need p to the 5th, which means I need 3 more factors of p. So that's going to be p cubed plus, then 4 times -2 gives me my -8. So that's going to be -2. And then I have on the outside p squared, and I need p to the 4th. So I need 2 more factors of p. Now I'm on to the third term. So 4 times 7 gives me 28. I have p squared, and I need p cubed. So I need 1 more factor of p. Finally, 4 times -14 would give me -56, and I have 2 factors of p on the outside because it says 4p squared, and in my last term I just have p squared, so I don't need any more factors of p. Alright, so in that step I have factored out the greatest common factor, and my next step is to take my 4 terms inside the brackets and create 2 binomials. So the first one and the second one. And now I'm going to work on each of these binomials separately, factoring out their greatest common factor. So I still have 4p squared outside, that hasn't changed. But now when I look at this first binomial, I have p cubed plus -2p squared. So the greatest common factor of those 2 terms is 2 factors of p. So I've got p squared that I can factor out, and then p squared times p would give me the p cubed, plus here I've got p squared and I need to hit -2p squared, so that's just -2. Now I'm moving on to the second binomial, 7p plus -14. And I can see that the greatest common factor there is 7. So I factor out the 7, and then 7 times p gives me 7p, plus 7 times -2 gives me -14. Then I check to make sure that I have the same thing in both sets of parentheses. So I have p plus -2 in the first set of parentheses, and p plus -2 in the second set. That's a common binomial factor. So now I just write my greatest common factor first, so 4p squared. Then I'm factoring out the greatest common factor of p plus -2, and I'm going to write that as p minus 2. And then in the last set of parentheses, I just write what's left over, which is p squared plus 7. And at that point, I'm finished factoring this polynomial.